Hey guys, Mike Zender here. Looking forward to discussing with Chad Lupke in Seasafe Homes what we have going on with maximizing flood claims. We had a recent opportunity to talk with a friend of ours who's an expert in the FEMA flood claims and as well as insurance adjustment. Glad you're tuning in. It's pretty cool that we've had the opportunity to talk to somebody that is actually an expert in the FEMA rules, flood insurance, insurance adjustment area, all of those things related to flood insurance. As you know, we obviously have a lot of clients right now who are starting to receive their insurance information back from their adjusters, and they're seeing line item after line item, 40, 50, maybe 100 plus pages of all these different line items of damage that has been incurred. And what they're saying is, how do I maximize this? What can I do? How do I know it's accurate? What are just some of those steps? And I think we were able to really get great feedback from an expert in this field who has thousands of claims and years of experience, not just here with local coastal flooding, but throughout the United States for different catastrophes. So where would you start off? Where would you start off with this?
Yeah, I mean, so number one, it's interesting. I think some people have the wrong perspective when they're thinking about this, thinking that this adjuster is their enemy, when in fact, they're their friend. And you know, maybe this isn't out in the public ether, but really they get paid based on how much they pay out. Right now, they're under some guidelines where they have to follow rules and you know, be accurate with the pricing they're doing. But the adjuster, their job is to maximize the claim for you based on what's there. So our friend has over 7,000 claims through his business. You know, a lot of these adjusters have hundreds and hundreds of claims that they're working on. So It might not be perfect. There's human error involved. So that's kind of why we wanted to provide this video to tell people, here's these things to look for.
Okay. So we're going to go through just a couple of the items we learned. I do think it's a great point that honestly, your insurance adjuster, the one who went in and did these measurements, that took all these notes, they're probably inundated with information and multiple homes and claims that they're trying to help. But at the same time, they are actually an advocate for you. They want to the, you know, dotting the I's and crossing the T's to the legality of their capabilities. They want to get you every dollar that you are entitled to. So for me, that was something interesting to hear, because when you start talking about, well, this adjuster said I was only going to get this much, I need to hire another adjuster from outside, a different one. What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, so good question. So there's a lot of information being, you know, spread, some rumors, all sorts of different websites and things like that. So number one, what we just wanted to tell people, obviously the most cost-effective way is to do things yourself. You know, you could hire a private adjuster. It seems like the industry rate is they're going to take about 10% of your claim to perhaps not get you any return on your claim. Not saying that's every case, but potentially you could do it on your own. So the number one thing to start out with is to be organized. So most of these estimators and adjusters are using a software called Xactimate, which is kind of like Excel on steroids. You know, so what we're encouraging people to do is be very, very organized. People that are, you know, savvy in Excel or have a family member that can help them with Excel to track everything room by room. So starting out with measurements. So there's so many different things that in the accumulation of a whole home, inches actually matter. So inches matter how high the water came up. Inches matter the room sizes, the square footage. So the biggest thing is to take that document, no matter how large it is, and it's hard to digest, but to go room by room and make sure that it's down to the inch, to make sure you are getting paid for exactly what the room is. So some instances of that are your ceiling height. Make sure you have the accurate ceiling height, because most times your claim is going to be paid to repaint the whole the whole wall up to the ceiling. So that's an interesting one right there. And then your cabinetry, making sure you have, all these little detail pieces that add up, making sure that they have all those things in place.
Right.
So measurements of every single thing is number one. The next one after that is the quality of the materials. So cabinets vary in different grade levels, and their software is going to determine what grade level the cabinet is. Now, if you have invested into some more expensive cabinets, you could ultimately get paid more money for your cabinetry. Another interesting one is they often don't pay for resetting or replacing your countertops. They're going to have a take off and reset clause in the contract. So now if you're gonna end up demoing your home, well, you're not going to have the opportunity for that to potentially break. So you're probably going to be stuck with that. But to make sure that your cabinetry is the right grade, your countertops are the right grade, all your fixtures, all those things, there's a lot of details that go into the qualities of the materials and making sure that you're getting paid for what level you have. Now, if you have an original 1970s, very, very basic home, it's going to be hard to make some of those adjustments. You're going to be counting more on the inches and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's that piece. The next one, and really we're going to hit on the big heavy hitters, the real impact things, not the onesie twosie stuff, but the next one would be flooring. So, there's two different kind of ways they look at tile flooring. Number one, they look at it where it's tile flooring over top of a concrete slab. That's going to be the lowest payout. The reason being, FEMA isn't going to want to pay on ripping out your tile floor. They're going to pay to sanitize, to regrout, to do those kind of things. Now, if it was on an elevated crawl space with a subfloor underneath, typically there's going to be some delamination and potentially that floor could be replaced. So understanding what the substrate is underneath the floor, you may get an adjuster that didn't necessarily note that or transpose something from his notes on something else. So making sure that you have that. Now, if you have a hardwood floor, it's going to have to be completely replaced. So that's probably one that we always look at to see, okay, this is potentially, if they didn't specify that if it was hardwood or not, or what grade, that's going to be a big one. Following the flooring is your wall type. So in some of these older homes, you'll see plaster. In the newer homes, you'll see drywall. Typically, industry payout wise, you're getting 3 times multiple on plaster just because of the added processes, the cost, things like that, versus having drywall. So if you have plaster, you're going to want to make sure you're getting paid for plaster. If you have drywall, they're typically paying in 2 foot or 4 foot increments. So a sheet of drywall is 4 feet tall. That's typically how they're going to pay. If you had 30 inches of water damage, they're going to pay you for a full piece of drywall. So that's sort of the flooring type.
Let me ask you real quick. So what you're saying when it comes to the water damage and the removal of the drywall, if you had areas that exceeded, maybe you had, I don't know, a little bit, a higher cut from let's say a remediation type of company, we need to make sure that they're giving the proper credit for the amount of drywall and just thinking through that entire process. I know that I'm not an expert like you are, who's got 20 years of building experience, over 20 years of building experience. But it makes sense to me when you're talking about, okay, the basics are going on, it's the drywall, and then the finishing of the drywall, and then, well, I've got to paint the drywall. Well, maybe I need a couple coats of paint. Well, I can't just paint the bottom of it. I need to paint the whole thing. And then you were talking about the flooring, and it made me think of, sometimes I know that we've had, maybe a home where we redid flooring in it, where we kept the baseboards there, but we put the flooring down and then just put a thin, what is that? Shoe mold around there.
Right.
So just ensuring that, not only do they give you the proper height for those baseboards, but also that you're getting credit for that additional type of molding.
Right.
Whether it's a special style or, all those things, they all add up.
Yeah.
And the one other thing that you had mentioned, I just don't want to forget, was when the homeowner is going in there and you're getting, at least from one of our clients that they showed us, when you're getting those designs that are coming back or those schematics that are showing each of your rooms, it's giving you whatever that dimension they measured is, 3 feet, 7 inches on that wall. literally you're saying, and what we heard was take your own measuring tape, go over that wall, confirm. If that's 3'9", write it down.
Right.
If the height of the wall is different than what they've given you credit for, write it down. If there's a wall you haven't seen, an outlet that hasn't been counted, a window that hasn't been accounted for, all those, they all start to add up.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, the little pieces add up at scale when you start going through these things. So on that same vein of trim, if you had window trims that were potentially damaged and you had jam extensions instead of just drywall returns, that's something that costs more money. As far as windows, depending on how high the floodwater came up, if there was pressure on the windows, potentially the seals could have failed. And in some cases, a flood could cause buckling to a window. So a whole window could have to be replaced, even though it's not cracked. It could be to a point where it doesn't seal out the outside air. So these are these little things where people may not see. You could put a straight edge on it and see, okay, this U-shaped, semi-curved window now is obviously not going to seal. Both of us live out here on the beach and we know how much water came in. And my sliders are only 5 months old, but they don't slide the same way they used to on the ground level. There's all sorts of debris and things like that. So the rollers need to be replaced. The tracks need to sometimes be replaced. There could be damage from things hitting from the floodwaters. Insulation's another one that you have to look at. Was there insulation behind the wall? I know in my home, I had a spray foam insulation that's supposedly flood tolerant, and I made a video early on where I stuck my finger in it and you could see the water
I remember you showing
pouring out, right? So things like that are never going to be exposed, they have to be torn out. Even things that may have been, moisture tolerant, or you were sold something that's moisture tolerant, it may have to be torn out. Mm-hmm. So getting into some other expensive things, things like water heaters, air conditioners, electrical things. So, all those things are not made to be in salt water. So if you're having to replace your air conditioner, your air handler, if any portion of your air handler, a lot of these air handlers were very low and there was salt water exposed to your air handler, that thing should be replaced. If your condenser had any level of water touch it, it needs to be replaced.
Right.
So there's those types of things. So a lot of times you may have paid for a higher SEER rating HVAC system, a condenser, and they're not going to know that. Potentially the sticker's not on the side of it anymore. They're not going to take the serial number, the model number, and know that you replaced it earlier on the year. So potentially having a licensed air conditioning person come out and saying, well, this is a more efficient system that was here, that could be $10,000 right there. The difference between what you were paid, which was maybe an industry standard, versus something else.
So what you're saying with that though is on the bigger ticket items, take the time to really understand what you are getting credit for versus what you had. And for the bigger ticket items, I know that there is he was showing us that there is basically a monthly, let's call it a monthly update of the book of prices.
Right.
And just ensure that it is probably the most recent, book of prices. I forget the exact name of that field, but that's right on the front of that adjuster's form of where these numbers came from. But then also go in and get those estimates from that air conditioning company to find out what the actual cost is for our market.
Right.
So even if they're saying, hey, it's going to cost $3,000 to replace your air conditioner, you get a quote for $7,000 or $8,000 for exactly that item that they're going to replace. I think that's where your adjuster can come into play and certainly start incrementally adding to that reimbursement you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And being friendly with these guys, again, they're on your side. If they miss something, it probably was not malicious. It was just because they were busy, or we've seen whole rooms be missed before. So making sure every single room's there. So starting with this and providing it in an easy to use way for your adjuster, so potentially he doesn't have to come back out and can get you the right amount of funds, that's important. If you sort of still need more, having a licensed contractor come out to provide a very detailed estimate would be sort of the next step. So it's something that we don't do. We're a new build only type of company, so we don't have resources for that kind of thing. But to have someone that has these ESX files, which is the Xactimate, to be able to have something that works together would be the best bet.
Right.
So they're speaking the same language to expedite this. Just like everything else in life, if you can make it easier, your potential for return is typically higher. So again, not being mad at these guys, understanding that they're on your side. And then when all this comes out, one last thing I'll address is if you have a lien on your property, whether you have an equity line from a bank or you have a mortgage, if you have any sort of debt on the property, when you end up getting this check, it's not going to be a check to you,
right?
Unless you have no debt on your property, right? And there's no lien holder, there's zero liens to the property. It's going to be a third-party check. So that means it's going to have your name, and it's also going to have the bank's name. So
right.
It's going to come to you potentially, but you can't go cash it, right? So just to kind of clarify, we've had people asking, why is this and this and this? I don't have a mortgage. You have an equity line. It's kind of the same thing as far as the law is concerned. So that's sort of what it looks like for trying to get the maximum out of your claim.
Right. And one other thing that I remember when you were going through these line items and you saw, for example, one of our clients had a front door that was damaged. Mm-hmm. And so they were going to replace the entire front door. And so you went around and, you looked at it from the interior perspective, and then your mindset went to the exterior as well. You're like, well, how are they going to finish the stucco here? There's no stucco that's being referenced. Okay, well, now you have the stucco. Well, what about the paint? Well, yeah, I can't just paint around here. I need to paint the whole thing
right.
to do this. So when you're talking about windows, when you're talking about doors and those exterior elements like that, I think that's really interesting. And from those funds received, yeah, that's basically, those funds are being held somewhat when it finally gets to you, from you, then to your mortgage holder or your equity line holder, HELOC holder. That money is going to somewhat fall into an escrow account that is then going to be dispersed based on when you are submitting your bills for the work of the remodeling or new construction and things like that. So lessons that we've learned. Obviously, I have never been through something like this before, and there's a lot of information that's out there, but just feel very fortunate we've had the opportunity to talk to some people who are really experts in this field and trying to give some guidance on helping our clients, giving some extra information and time to maximize their, to really, I guess, reduce the amount of hurt that they have right now.
Right.
So, well, thanks for tuning in. Another episode here with Seasafe Homes. Mike Zender, Chad Lupke, certainly appreciate you. Thank you.